There are certain places in this world that feel wrong the moment you step onto their soil, not because of anything you can see, but because of the heavy silence, the way the air itself seems thicker, as though it remembers things you're not supposed to know. The Myrtles Plantation is one of those places. Tucked away in the small town of St. Francisville, Louisiana, it looks, at first glance, like nothing more than an elegant relic of the Old South, with its sprawling oak trees draped in Spanish moss and its grand white columns rising proudly from the earth. But to stop at appearances would be a mistake, because beneath the surface, beauty lies something far older, far darker, and far more enduring than the brick and mortar that hold this house together. The plantation was built in 1796 by General David Bradford, a man who was no stranger to turmoil. Bradford had fled Pennsylvania after his involvement in the Whiskey Rebellion, carrying with him secrets and scars, and he sought to bury them in this secluded corner of Louisiana. Here, on land heavy with heat and history, he erected the house that would one day be called one of the most haunted in America. They say Bradford was a stern man, but also a practical one, and in his time, the plantation was a place of both prosperity and shadows. What stands today is a house of deceptive elegance, 2 stories tall with an expansive veranda that wraps around the front. It carries the unmistakable charm of antebellum architecture. French doors open into wide hallways, chandeliers hang from ceilings high enough to echo whispers, and large windows look out over grounds that stretch into untamed wilderness. But if you stand there long enough, in the quiet of late afternoon, you might notice something unsettling: the stillness. It's a silence that doesn't soothe. It presses in as though the house itself is holding its breath, waiting for you to hear something hidden beneath the calm. From the very beginning, tragedy seemed woven into the plantation story. Bradford's time here passed without much fanfare, but when the land changed hands and came into the possession of Judge Clark Woodruff through marriage, the seeds of its haunting reputation began to take root. The Woodruffs brought with them not just wealth and influence, but also sorrow. Judge Woodruff's wife, Sarah, and their children would later become central figures in one of the plantation's most infamous legends, though the details remain tangled between history and ghost story. What is certain, however, is that death visited the family, and its mark never left these walls. The plantation changed owners multiple times over the decades, each family leaving behind pieces of themselves, some literal, some spectral. Fires swept through the property, wars ravaged the land around it, and the passing of years layered memory upon memory, until the Myrtles became less a home and more a vessel for grief. It has been called a time capsule of Southern history, but to those who walk its halls at night, it feels more like a mausoleum. There are stories etched into every creaking floorboard, every crack in the plaster, stories of duels fought on the front lawn, of children who never lived long enough to see adulthood, of whispers carried through the corridors when no one else is home. And though skeptics may dismiss these as folklore, those who visited will tell you there is a difference between a story you hear and a story you feel. The Myrtles is the latter. The plantation's reputation as a haunted site did not grow overnight. In the 20th century, as preservationists and locals began to record its history, accounts of strange encounters multiplied. Guests reported cold spots that lingered even in the stifling Louisiana heat, mirrors that seemed to hold more than just reflections, and portraits whose painted eyes followed them as they walked past. The stories spread, passed from guide to visitor, from visitor to friend, until the Myrtles became synonymous with ghostly activity. But why here? Why this house when there are thousands of old southern plantations, each with its own blood-stained history? Perhaps the answer lies in the convergence of suffering that seems to stain the soil itself. Enslaved men and women lived and died here, their labor building the wealth of families who often ignored their humanity. Wars brought violence to the doorstep. Diseases swept through households, stealing lives before their time. And then there are the darker tales, murders whispered in the dead of night, betrayals within families, secrets buried so deep that the earth itself has not forgotten them. Some visitors describe the plantation as though it were alive. They say the house watches you, that when you cross its threshold, it takes note of you, deciding whether to reveal itself or remain silent. Skeptics may roll their eyes, but anyone who has walked the long, shadowed hallways admits to one thing: the feeling, that crawling awareness at the back of your neck, that strange certainty that you are not, in fact, alone. Even the approach to the plantation is an experience in itself. The driveway, lined with centuries-old oaks, feels more like a procession than a welcome. Their branches knit together overhead, creating a tunnel of shade, and the moss that drips from them sways like shrouds in the wind. It's beautiful, undeniably, but it's also funereal, as if every step is taking you closer to something that has been waiting for you all along. Inside, the house bears the weight of its age. The wooden floors sigh beneath your feet, and the walls seem to carry the echo of every voice that has ever spoken within them. Paintings of long-dead owners hang in solemn judgment, and the scent of old wood and faint mildew clings to the air, mingling with something else, something metallic like rust, though some swear it is the faint trace of blood. The Myrtles has been called many things: a historic landmark, a southern treasure, a haunted relic. But perhaps the truest name is the one whispered by those who know its legends best: the House of Restless Spirits. Because no matter how carefully it has been restored, no matter how many tours pass through its halls, the plantation remains a place where the past has refused to die. And that is what draws people here, not just the architecture, not just the history, but the promise of something more. The possibility that in this house, the veil between the living and the dead is not just thin, it is torn. For every brick laid here, for every life lived and lost within these walls, a mark has been left. And if you listen closely, if you stand in the dark and let the silence wash over you, you might just hear it. The faint sound of footsteps in an empty hall, the soft murmur of a voice with no source, the undeniable feeling that someone is standing right behind you. The Myrtles Plantation is not just a house. It is a graveyard disguised as a home, a keeper of secrets that will never rest, and a reminder that history, when soaked in enough blood, never truly fades away. And this is only the beginning. If the Myrtles Plantation is a house of whispers, then Chloe is its voice. She is the reason the plantation's reputation stretches far beyond St. Francisville, the reason visitors enter with curiosity and leave with trembling unease. Chloe was not born a ghost. She was a woman with a life, a story, and a choice that would echo across centuries. Chloe was an enslaved woman who lived in the shadows of the Woodruff family, the owners of the plantation during its most infamous years. She was striking, intelligent, careful, and observant in ways that made her both indispensable and resented. Within the grand walls, she moved silently, a constant presence whose eyes missed nothing. But behind her calm exterior, resentment brewed. It was not hatred for the family in its general sense, but for the injustices she endured, the control they held over her, the life she could never claim as her own. The legend says Chloe's breaking point came with betrayal, though even the truth of her betrayal is tangled between rumor and horror. Some say she fell in love with one of the Woodruffs and was spurned. Others whisper that she discovered a terrible secret, a betrayal within the family, and that revenge was the only way she could regain power in a world that offered her none. Whatever the reason, the story culminates in a single act of fatal cunning. The poisoned cake. Chloe baked a cake for the Woodruff family, a seemingly innocent gesture that hid her intentions. Mixed within the sweet layers were crushed oleander leaves, a deadly poison. She presented it as a gift, a token of service, perhaps even loyalty. But under the flour, sugar, and frosting, she hid her vengeance. When the family took their first bites, the tragedy unfolded. Judge Woodruff's wife and 2 of their daughters ate the cake first. Within hours, they were writhing in pain, their bodies convulsing as the poison claimed them with merciless speed. Panic swept through the household, servants screamed, and Chloe watched as her plan reached its horrifying conclusion. Whether she expected them all to die or whether she had miscalculated remains unknown. The deaths were immediate, brutal, and unforgettable. The aftermath was swift and brutal. Fear and fury overcame the remaining servants, who seized Chloe, dragging her into the night. Her punishment was as sudden as her crime, a rope thrown around her neck, and she was hanged from a tree on the plantation grounds. Witnesses claim she did not go quietly. Her cries tore through the night, a sound that would, according to legend, be etched into the walls of the Myrtles forever. And then she died, but not completely. For reasons no historian can explain, the plantation seemed to retain her presence. Guests in the centuries that followed reported seeing a woman in a green turban, her face partially hidden, watching silently from hallways and corners. Shadows shift in ways that suggest her movement, and whispers sometimes echo through the house, words of warning, of accusation, of longing. Chloe's spirit, whether angry, remorseful, or eternally restless, became the dominant presence in the plantation's haunting lore. Chloe is not merely a ghost to be seen or felt. She is a symbol, a reminder of betrayal, of power wielded through fear, and of the consequences of actions both cruel and desperate. The cake, the deaths, the hanging, these are not just stories. They are the foundations of her legend, a legend that continues to chill the blood of anyone who dares to stay overnight or even walk past the Myrtles after dark. And so, Chloe remains, forever watching, forever waiting, a ghost whose story is inseparable from the plantation itself. Chloe is the most infamous ghost of the Myrtles Plantation, but she is far from the only presence lingering in its halls. The house is layered with centuries of sorrow, and each tragedy seems to have left an imprint, a soul refusing to move on. Visitors often speak of seeing more than just one figure in the dim light of its corridors, hearing the echoes of lives violently interrupted. Some claim the spirits of the Woodruff family themselves remain tethered to the house. Judge Woodruff, stern even in death, is said to roam the study, the faint outline of his form moving between the shelves of books he once prized. His wife and children, victims of Chloe's fateful cake, are sometimes glimpsed in the upstairs bedrooms, their figures fleeting, as if caught between worlds, eternally replaying the moments before their deaths. Then there are the children. Playful yet tragic, they appear in the hallways and on the veranda, laughing softly one moment and crying the next. Guests report doors slamming behind them, small hands pressing against windows, or tiny footprints appearing on dusty floors. Proof that innocence lost can linger as vividly as the living. And the enslaved men and women who built and sustained the plantation are also said to haunt the grounds. Their suffering, unacknowledged in life, manifests in Cold spots, sudden chills, and whispering voices that seem to come from nowhere. Some have reported seeing shadowy figures moving among the trees outside, as if keeping watch or replaying labor from centuries past. Their presence is less dramatic than Chloe's, but far more pervasive, as though the land itself remembers their toil and grief. Together, these spirits create an uneasy symphony of the Myrtles, a chorus of the lost, the wronged, and the restless. Visitors describe the sensation of being watched from multiple directions, a weight pressing on the chest or a soft tug at the sleeve, gentle yet impossible to ignore. It is a constant reminder that the house is alive with memory, with vengeance, with sorrow, and that anyone who enters carries the risk of becoming part of its endless narrative. The Myrtles Plantation is not haunted by a single ghost. It is haunted by its entire history, every life cut short, every injustice done, and every secret left unspoken. And the more time passes, the more it seems that the house itself conspires to make sure these spirits are never forgotten. The Myrtles Plantation has drawn countless visitors over the years, each hoping to glimpse its infamous ghosts, and many leaving with stories that chill the spine. Those who have spent time in the house often describe an atmosphere thick with expectation, a sensation that the walls themselves are listening. Footsteps echo when no one is moving, doors open and close on their own, and a faint, metallic scent sometimes fills the air, inexplicable but unmistakable. Ghost hunters, drawn by the plantation's reputation, have documented activity that defies rational explanation. Cameras capture shadows shifting in the corners of rooms, figures appearing in hallways where no one is present. Infrared thermometers detect sudden cold spots, dropping several degrees in a matter of seconds, often near Chloe's supposed haunts or along the veranda. EVP recordings, electronic voice phenomena, have picked up faint whispers, sometimes calling names, other times repeating phrases like, "Why are you here?" or simply, "Go." Tourists and researchers alike recount fleeting glimpses of figures that vanish when confronted. A visitor once claimed to see a small child sitting on the staircase, staring silently, only for the steps to be empty moments later. Another described a woman in a green turban appearing in a doorway, her face partially obscured, before dissolving into thin air. Photographs tell a similar story. Faces materialize in windows, misty silhouettes linger near walls, and hands seem pressed against glass where none could exist. Even local guides acknowledge the plantation's unpredictable nature. One moment the halls are quiet, almost serene. The next, the house feels charged, as if anticipating something unseen. Guests have reported feeling sudden touches on the shoulder, cold drafts racing past, or the sensation of being watched by eyes that do not belong to the living. These incidents are so consistent that the Myrtles has become a hotspot, not only for thrill seekers, but also for serious paranormal researchers seeking evidence of the supernatural. Whether skeptic or believer, anyone who spends the night in the Myrtles comes away with the same uneasy realization. Something here refuses to rest. The house is alive with memory, with lingering spirits, and with the undeniable proof that history, especially when soaked in tragedy, leaves a trace that even time cannot erase. The Myrtles Plantation has transcended mere legend to become a fixture of American paranormal culture. Its story has been chronicled in countless books, each attempting to capture the chilling atmosphere and the tales of restless spirits that haunt its halls. Writers and historians alike are drawn to the plantation's layered history, where fact and folklore blend so seamlessly that separating the two seems impossible. Documentaries have taken viewers inside the house, revealing shadowy corridors, flickering lights, and interviews with witnesses who recount experiences so vivid that skepticism fades in the face of their conviction. Television specials and online paranormal shows frequently feature the Myrtles as a prime example of a location where history and hauntings converge, cementing its status as one of the most haunted sites in the United States. For visitors, ghost tours offer a tangible connection to its eerie reputation. Guides recount Chloe's story, point out the bedrooms of murdered children, and lead guests through spaces where the enslaved once lived, all while emphasizing that the house itself seems aware of every footstep. The plantation has become more than a house. It is a living repository of stories, a site where curiosity meets fear, and where the past refuses to stay buried. When you step into the Myrtles Plantation in your imagination, you must feel it, not just see it. The air is thick, heavy with humidity and unspoken secrets. Every creak of the floorboards becomes a drumbeat of anticipation. Every shadow stretching across the walls feels like it might move, or has already moved, just out of sight. This is the essence of cinematic horror: to make the viewer feel, to make the listener tremble without seeing the source. I remember standing in the long hallway, staring at the faint outline of a woman in green, her turbaned head tilted slightly, as though she were listening. I whispered almost to myself, "Chloe, are you real?" The silence stretched unbearably until a faint sigh drifted through the air, brushing my ear like the softest hand. That moment, a pause, a breath, a sound you cannot explain, is what transforms history into terror. Suspense builds not only in what happens, but in what does not. A door that slams shut behind you, footsteps on a staircase where no one ascends, whispers that repeat your own name. These are cues the mind cannot ignore. Narration must linger on these small details: the cold spot brushing your arm, the shifting candlelight, the faint smell of something burnt and metallic. Dialogue deepens the tension. Imagine a guide, voice barely above a whisper. If you hear her footsteps, do not follow them. She wants you to, or a visitor muttering, "Did you see that? She was there, behind the window." Words are fragments of fear, leaving spaces for the imagination to fill. The story becomes participatory, pulling the audience into the shadows with every line, making them complicit in the unfolding dread. Cinematic storytelling at the Myrtles Plantation is about immersion. The listener should feel the walls pressing in, hear the faint heartbeat in the floorboards, and sense Chloe's watchful eyes. Every pause, every carefully chosen word, every whispered dialogue is a thread weaving them deeper into the story, until fear becomes not something told, but something lived. After centuries of stories, tragedies, and unexplained phenomena, the Myrtles Plantation stands not just as a relic of history, but as a monument to the restless. Its walls have absorbed laughter and sorrow, betrayal and grief, murder and revenge, and in doing so they have created a tapestry of haunting unlike any other. To visit the plantation is to step into a space where time bends, where the past refuses to be silent, and where the boundary between the living and the dead feels perilously thin. The story of Chloe alone could define the plantation, yet it is only one layer of a far more intricate web. The spirits of children, of murdered family members, of the enslaved who built and sustained the house, all coexist within its halls. Each apparition, each cold spot, each whisper in the dark contributes to a sense of collective memory that refuses to be ignored. It is a haunting born not of imagination, but of repeated trauma and unresolved history, a haunting that continues to claim the attention of anyone who dares to enter. Over time, the Myrtles Plantation has become more than a house. It has become a symbol. It is a symbol of what happens when human cruelty meets circumstance, when secrets fester and vengeance lingers. It is a symbol of curiosity and fear intertwined, drawing tourists, historians, and paranormal investigators into its grip. Books, documentaries, and ghost tours attempt to catalog its mysteries, yet none can truly capture the weight of its presence. To stand inside the house is to feel a living history pressing down upon you, and to know in a way that words cannot convey that some histories do not rest quietly in the past. What makes the Myrtles truly terrifying is its subtlety. It does not scream, it insinuates. A shadow flickers just out of sight. A whisper brushes your ear. A room suddenly drops in temperature. These moments, seemingly small, accumulate into an experience that lingers long after you have left the grounds. Visitors often find themselves replaying the moments in their minds, questioning what was real and what was imagined. And that lingering doubt, that nagging feeling that the plantation may still be watching, is precisely why the Myrtles remains etched in the public imagination. Even as preservationists restore the physical structure, the spirit of the Myrtles persists. Its legends endure because human fascination with the unknown is eternal. It is a house that refuses to surrender its secrets, a place where every creak and groan is imbued with the weight of history, where every shadow could hide a story, and where the line between past and present is always blurred. The Myrtles Plantation endures because it is alive with memory, with regret, and with fear. It is not haunted because it is old, but because it remembers. Every visitor leaves changed, carrying with them a piece of its story, a reminder that some places, some tragedies, and some spirits are too powerful to ever be forgotten. And so it remains, century after century, as one of America's most haunted houses. A house that challenges the living to confront the restless dead and the shadows that lurk just beyond perception.